Welcome to Stock Therapy with Penny Queen. Today I have Eric Appelman, Chief Revenue Officer of Aduro Clean Technologies here. Welcome back, Eric.
Nice, thank you, and honored.
All right. Well, I just wanted to get an update for investors on what's been going on with Aduro lately, and we haven't heard from you in a while, so I thought I would hit you up. So, how's Aduro?
Aduro is wonderful. We are continuing to see a lot of interest in what we are doing, and we are helped in that because companies and people now start to make their calculations, realizing that a circular world or a renewable world is not going to come free and will not be paid for by good intentions. And now that the going gets a little bit tougher, actually the tough gets going. And you really start to see a realization with people that in order to get a financially viable proposition for all that circularity, you do need a very solid technical proposition as we offer at Aduro. For the rest, we are also moving real hard and nice on scaling. And we have done a lot of work on understanding our chemistry and documenting our chemistry. Now we're moving forward in scaling up in the direction of a continuous process, a thing that you could run and that could continuously churn out product and money. So very exciting with that, and very happy to share you about that. The other thing that I find really interesting is the realization that circularity and recycling is a systematic thing. And without digging into that deeper now, I'll allow you to come back to that when it suits you.
Okay. Well, I know you've been doing a lot of conferences lately. Have you been getting good traction there?
Yeah, you do. You do. You can sometimes say that there is too many conferences in circularity, and so you cannot attend all of them. But what you do see is that people are interested, and as you actually immerse yourself in the world, because that is the essence. You should not withdraw and sit in a lab or in an office and dream the world as you think it is. And you gradually hone your proposition. And one of the major realizations is that almost regardless of the technology, the key challenge that we have if we want to make recycling work is that we have to find a solution of all that is there to be recycled. And that means that the show is a little bit ending for those technology that can only take a little bit in isolation and leave the rest to be burned or landfilled or whatever else. So you can have a wonderful story like, yeah, I take things away from landfill. But if that's only the top 15% and the other 85% have to go there, nobody's going to like you in the end of the day. That is a thing that I picked up on conferences and also meetings with customers recently, where they say, if we are really honest, quite a few of the technologies out there will not cut it, not because they are stupid technologies, but they're just not addressing the problem. They're addressing a small part of the problem.
That's something that I noticed when I originally met Aduro. I did a lot of research on these other competing technologies that were in development or already at their peak. And
Yeah.
it's something that I continue to go back to say, okay, what does the landscape look like now? And there's definitely novel technologies out there, but they operate in such a small segment of the plastics world that what it would take to scale it up and then to only take in a fraction of the problem. I think what makes me come back to Aduro time and time again is just how broad of a solution it is, and being able to handle more contaminants, being able to adapt the process. That I think is what's going to make it continue to win this race. Yeah. I mean, I always say win this race, but when it comes down to it, I mean, we all win when this problem is solved. And I know that there's going to be more than one solution for different areas of it, but being able to capture a larger market share of that problem is, I think, what's going to make us look back on our portfolios a decade from now and just laugh. So
yeah, it is not only going to be, it is actually going to be multiple solutions Yeah, I think last time we must have talked about mechanical recycling. And mechanical recycling is, of course, the best in terms of energy, but we all know that you need really pure stuff and it needs to be all that. And as such, it might be able to take 20%. Let's just take a number and don't hold me over it in 30 years from now, when I'm 92, by the way. But if we can send 20% of all our plastics to mechanical recycling, and with little energy, we can bring it back to high value products, that's a great start. But then you have to take the other 80. And some of the technologies that are out there are not complementary because they're actually competing for the same 20. Now, what we do is we specifically aim at the other 80. And that is also what we can do. And it is easy to explain to people that are skilled in chemistry that yes, this is complementary. We will take what is left. Now, every little penny that you can take there is profit. And I dare say that our technology in that sense is pretty uniquely positioned. And we are the only real full complementary technology to mechanical recycling. And I'm very proud of that.
All right. Well, this past week I listened to an earnings report by Pure Cycle
Yeah.
because I try and pay attention to the whole industry. And something that I thought was interesting is their CEO said that their plastic polypropylene could be sold for $1.36 a pound, and that's about 3 times the price of virgin plastic. Do you have any thoughts or opinions on those numbers?
Now, it is obvious that at this moment, circular plastics do command a premium. And you can actually look at it from two ways. And one way is where you look like, okay, there is a demand for it. And this is not only a demand of the idealistic view. Just last month, actually in January, the European Union approved a piece of regulation that is called the PPWR. That is the Plastic Packaging Waste Regulation. And that specifically says that from a certain moment on, a certain percentage of all the carbon atoms that you find in plastic have to be from circular sources. And it is not 1%, it's more like 30% by 2030. And that means that everybody who would like to market any plastic packaging in Europe has to hunt and fight for that circular carbon. And that's why you're getting some very healthy prices indeed. On the other hand, there's another logic. You said it is 3 times virgin. But if we would say, okay, let's assume that that virgin plastic ends up burnt within a couple of months after use. The emissions are 3 times its weight. The cost of those emissions are pretty much at least once that price of virgin. So here you have already a formidable cost component that you can honestly add to that. And then suddenly that 3 times doesn't look so much more anymore. Now, where that is going to end up in 30 years, I certainly hope that all the technologies that we are now bringing are going to go through some good learning curve and will be cheaper and more scaled. But in the end of the day, it does not look like an insurmountable bridge once we are talking honestly about the cost of things. And it is only very encouraging that people apparently realize it and start to pay for it. Now, getting demand, that is key. And that is precisely what, of course, the European Union wants. They understand that the new technology is not going to be competitive to a technology that has been honed down for 100 years. And it needs time. But by creating a market, this is actually how it ended up with windmills. And it was actually in Germany they started to stimulate the use of windmills, and then there were more windmills, and they become more efficient, they become lower cost, and then they could be built bigger. And as a consequence, it has now reached a stage where in a country like mine, wind power is fully commercial. And there have been some nasty sounds about it here and there. But the state of Texas, for instance, last year built enormous numbers of wind power. Now, I know the Texans very well for being extremely money oriented for good reasons. So it must make sense. Yeah. Same story you're going to see in plastic recycling. And we do have to have it well. You cannot pay with good intentions, but once the thing starts steamrolling, it will steamroll onwards.
Yeah, any profitable technology
Yeah.
will get picked up.
And it is my duty and our duty to make it profitable. And investors shall be harsh and say, hey guys, explain me why it will ever turn a profit. And I shall have an answer. And I'm proud to have that answer. And I can only encourage to do that.
All right. Well, you mentioned Europe, and this morning there was a there's a piece of news about 100 billion euros
Yeah.
to support clean technology companies. And I think that's a really important note that Europe and the rest of the world are moving forward. I know there's a lot of chaos on the U.S. side of not knowing where different regulations stand and things like that, but the rest of the world is clearly advancing in terms of cleaner technologies. How do you see this impacting Aduro?
Now, this is of course only good. And the reason that it is so important in Europe, that on one hand, we do not enjoy the luck of the United States of large amounts of fossil carbon for very low cost, especially gas. We just don't have it. And then, of course, you can say whatever you like about the country and the continent, but you are lucky or you're not. Having said that, we do find it important that we retain some of that industry, and we find it even more important to do that in a sustainable way. So this is essentially providing the funds to do like a NASA project, erect a new industry, erect a new capability, so that we will be able to not only retain a piece of crucial industry, but also foster the case of a sustainable industry. It comes in many different forms, but for instance, if the traditional chemical industry in Europe can survive because we do something about excessive cost of energy, that is going to help us because that is where we would like to ship our circular feedstocks to. So this is a very intertwined industry. Everybody supplies everyone and takes someone else's residual product and so on. So to sustain that fabric of intertwined industry is very crucial. And what the European Union doing here is just right. And it shall not take the shape of supporting companies that should be gone. As such, I admire the United States. If something doesn't work, they kiss it goodbye. We should do the same in Europe. You might mitigate a little bit of social impact, but not for too long. But this is first and predominantly to keep good business alive and foster innovation. And that is a good thing for the world and for Europe.
All right. Can I get you to give me any update on the next generation plant, NGP?
Yeah, we are. It has been designed, and we are ordering it. We will commission it. Of course, those things always go slower than you want, but I'm very, very confident. Also because it is a surprisingly straightforward design. And we do not need to invent a moon rocket or a nuclear fusion plant. We are using things that you actually can buy off the shelf. But you have to fit them together. That is always a thing that you have to learn. But I'm very optimistic. When I see this design, we will have it this year and we will start churning out not only the experimental results, but also the materials that our customers can start to work with.
Yeah, this makes me very, very excited on so many levels, but to see the technology advance in terms of capacity makes me very happy, but also to just as a reminder that Aduro has clients that pay
Yeah.
for that material to be processed and tested, whereas a lot of other companies out there are basically paying for their own research, stockpiling materials. I really like the approach. What do things look like on the client and engaging new clients?
Yeah, the picture remains the same. And the interest remains high, even though maybe in some parts of the world the politics become a little bit challenging, or for instance, there is a very aggressive push from virgin materials. Very simply because people have built too much capacity. And because also people do realize that, hey, you have to defend it. And you may know, or then the audience may know, is that Saudi Arabia has a clear strategy, which is crude oil to chemicals. Realizing full well, and I appreciate their vision, that crude oil to car fuels is not going to last forever. So there is a very strong push to take crude oil to chemicals. And that is a valid point. If chemicals are used well, and if after the end of life you do recycle them properly, nothing against it. But of course, it also means there's tons of virgin material. In my country, in the Netherlands, we have been a little bit panicking because a couple of young recycling companies went belly up. Now, is that a huge problem? No. If there is a booming industry, there will be winners and losers. That's one. And the other thing is, yeah, we will have some temporary setbacks, and we just have to make sure that we push the winning propositions and we support the winning propositions. And some of them are not as good. Nothing bad with that. Having said that, in the end of the day, of course, if virgin plastics get very cheap, we shall also push for something like properly putting a dollar on the consequential cost, on their emissions, on that sort of thing. And I think that is what you start to see happening. So it is not about protecting wild dreams. It is about making sure that the good things get through.
Yeah, I mean, I think any free market economy is going to ensure successful companies continue to be
Yeah.
successful. Is there anything else you feel investors need to be aware of or would like to know right now?
I think they shall realize that the momentum is there, but that the scrutiny is maybe a bit tighter. And that if you invest in this space, you have to really understand why company A has something that can make it. So you shall ask honest questions about, okay, if I really take all your cost into consideration, where do I end up? And how does that compare to what you will get in the market? Honest, basic questions. And for us, that is not going to be a difficult one because I think I explained it before. We will be able to use the leftovers that nobody else does anything with. We make a product that is actually very high in quality and does require very little after treatment. And in between, we do not lose as much as others. So we pretty much carry 95% of all the carbon atoms over the finish line into good feedstock again. Now, those are the sort of questions you have to ask. And you have to ask about what capital, what labor, am I competing with others? How secure is my raw material? Very basic stuff. And for anybody investing in the chemical industry. And I'll be happy to try and convince everyone, or not try, to convince everyone.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
I appreciate you being out there fighting the good fight and spending all that time engaging,
Yeah.
new potential clients and really explaining things to the whole world out there because they're not going to listen to me, and they probably
Oh,
shouldn't.
I hope they will.
No, and I think the group of investors that the company has are definitely well informed, and I love that. But only a couple of us have a real chemical background, and I'm definitely not in that pile. But it becomes very easy to see, just with the pieces that we do know, paints a very
Yeah.
clear picture of the future here. So I'm happy. Oh, all right.
Good.
Well, thank you, Eric. Thanks for taking the time.
It's a huge pleasure, and I will happily be back and talk. I just got an investor of ours who says he's going to cross my path when I'm presenting in Singapore, our first foray in the Asian market. Also nice to see if things are picking up there. Yeah, wherever I can meet anybody live to convince, let me know.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Have a good one. Thank you.